That was a Midnight Star Curious. I'm just curious about this. Larry Elder, who's a leading Republican, today is a recall of California. It is no secret that I despise Larry Elder. I've never made that a secret. I had him on my show when we did the Hughleys just to tell him to his face how much I hate it, which was dumb because I paid for the privilege of telling somebody how much I hate it. But one of the things I've always disliked about him is how disingenuous he was. He's very disingenuous. He does what he wants. He's very duplicitous. Like he was the sage of South Central. Like you can hear him in interview after interview saying that he was born in South Central and he's a child of South Central and I was raised in South Central. Now let's just do the math, right? You don't have to listen to me. You can look at the demographics of South Central when Larry Elder, who's 69 years old, soon to be 70, went there. When he lived in South Central, it was majority white. When he graduated from Crenshaw Hall, it was far more white people. As a matter of fact, when Larry Elder lived there, white people lived there in a great number. But what he does is what he always seeks to do. He seeks to capitalize of the cachet of black people, the infamy of South Central without the association of it. He capitalizes off his skin and his mentality, and he uses black people when he can. The sage of South Central, Heather lived there when you were there. What that means is that you grew up in a rough and tumble environment. You did not. What that means is you grew up struggling. You did not. When you lived in South Central, white people lived there because it was a great place to live. Matter of fact, Kevin Costner, who's 66 years old, about 4 years younger than Larry Elder, grew up in Linwood, which is right next to Compton. As a matter of fact, it was all white. There have never been neighborhoods that were built for black people at all. Only prisons and projects, and even projects weren't built for them. So what Larry Elders is trying to do is to make a connection with pain and suffering and lack of, and as he grew up from these hard scrabble circumstances and made himself into something. I'm not saying he isn't successful, but I am saying the South Central he brags about growing up, he did not. As a matter of fact, I am 57, and when I went to school, about 14 years younger than him, when I went to school, there were white people in my class from kindergarten to the first grade. After the first grade, I didn't see him no more. I didn't see him again. When you say the sage of South Central, you're making a connection to infamy. You're making a connection to a rough and tumble neighborhood, to South Central, how to survive there. He didn't have to. He was connected to a whole different thing. And that is why he can look down on the people. You would not, if you grew up in the environment that you're pretending to be connected to, you would not have a disdain for people like you do. You could have a different vantage point from them. You wouldn't hate them like you do. You're the sage of South Central. When you lived there and they actually burned sage. Like this, and he uses that as his calling out. Like when Ben Carson was running for president, he talked about how he stabbed somebody. Like it's true. It is true. It is true that he grew up in South Central. But when he grew up there, it was the place to be. That they hadn't started busing. The people hadn't started moving up. You tell me a 70-year-old black man who grew up in Los Angeles, in South Central Los Angeles. We didn't live there. We lived other places. We couldn't even live in the parts of the city that he talks about right now. But he uses black people to give himself an advantage, to have people gleam onto it, to give him some legitimacy. But he does not even give them the courtesy of recognizing the problems of those people. And he can do that because he never lived there when they did. That's a little note from the GED section. We got the Jazz Report coming up in 15 minutes. It's the D.L. Hughley Show.